Cool, thank you. If there are any media or any other people filming, if we could just stay kind of on that side of the circle, and please don't film people's emails and their screens if possible. Thank you. Right, we have what many people are here waiting for, obviously, is Te Ohu Tāmaki, the Housing and Improving the Wellbeing of Aucklanders. Marlon, and I'm assuming you have a number of other people coming up as well. I only have one name on my list, so if you could introduce yourselves as you come to the desk to speak. Thank you. We won't have time to you all to individually introduce yourselves, but 4 will do. Kia ora, thank you. If you just, so it's a button on the right, and every time you stop talking, if you could just switch it off as well, and that allows other mics to be turned on and off.
Testing.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou ki te kaunihera o Tāmaki Makaurau, ko Marlon Drake tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name is Marlon Drake, lead organiser of Te Ui Whakawhanaunga Tāmaki Makaurau, a civil society alliance of more than 40 faith organisations like the Anglican Diocese, the Salvation Army, unions like the Maritime Union, Air Tour Union, and community organisations like I Love Avondale and the Sisters of Mercy Whitty. We are joining hands to campaign for the well-being and the common good of whānau and tamariki in our city. And today is a chance for us to introduce ourselves to Auckland Council and briefly discuss an issue of extreme importance to our communities and every Aucklander.
Morena koutou katoa, ko Karen tōku ingoa. My name is Karen. My member organisation is Belong Aotearoa, and I'm a representative of Te Ohu Tāmaki. Auckland communities are made up of over 165 ethnic groups, has the largest Māori and Pacifica population, and houses a quarter of the European population. This is why Auckland communities need a seat at the table. Our communities need to have a voice into the decisions that impact their worlds, their lives and their whānau. Council must prioritise inclusivity and community engagement, intentionally seeking input from residents, community groups and stakeholders at every stage of the decision-making process. Today, we are here to change the way democracy and politics are done in our city. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Margaret Martin tōku ingoa, from Sisters of Mercy Whitty, a member organisation of Te Uhu. Since the founding event of Te Uhu Tāmaki, the Te Uhu Alliance began a campaign to ensure that everybody in Auckland and Aotearoa has the right to a decent home. We come before you this morning to make clear our intent to call on Auckland Council, through you, our elected representatives, to join with us to realise this kaupapa. On Easter Sunday, I visited a family of 8, mum and dad and 6 children living in emergency housing. They are crammed into a 1-bedroom space, or 1-room space, of which the entire floor is taken over with a set of bunks and mattresses. Cooking facilities are downstairs in a communal kitchen area. They had been living there since August 2023. Can you imagine living like this? The eldest child, a girl of 12, is disabled. In spite of her shortened arms and legs, she manages incredibly well. Mid-April, the family were transferred to transitional housing, a 2-bedroom, 2-storey unit with a small kitchen, lounge and bathroom. An improvement, of course, from the emergency accommodation, but still very inadequate housing for the family. How long they will be there, who knows? This situation is replicated for thousands of tamariki and whānau throughout our city. People have no place to call home, and for many, the hope of being housed in a healthy, affordable, stable and secure dwelling is unlikely any time soon. We believe that Council has a significant and important role to play in solving the housing crisis in our city. Of course, Council cannot do this alone. No one entity can. It will take a collective and concerted effort. At Te Uhu's founding event, in the presence of over 600 community leaders and representatives, the now Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, committed to building 1,000 state-owned houses a year in our city. We have that commitment. We call on Auckland Council to engage with the Alliance, with Aucklanders. We have power and influence, and we will use this to work collaboratively for long-term transformative solutions to the chronic housing shortage in our city. Let us work together to fulfil every Aucklander's right to a decent home.
Mahalo lele, councillors. My name is Talavao Ngata. I'm here on behalf of Community Housing Aotearoa. Our organisation is also a proud member of Te Ohu Tāmaki. CHA is a peak body for the community housing sector, and we believe that affordable, healthy homes are at the heart of strong communities. We support all Aucklanders being well housed across the housing continuum. Our Te Ohu submission on the long-term plan is built on, as you have heard, local community stories, and our mayoral housing asks are rights-based and backed up by evidence. Our research tells us that even if house prices remain the same while incomes rose, Auckland would only become affordable by 2042. That's 20 years from now. We believe that Auckland Council should be enabled to require good planning and delivery of affordable homes to meet local needs. Thank you for meeting with us today. We're happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, thank you so much, and thank you to all the groups and organisations here represented. It's fantastic to see, and I know there's many of those that cannot make it who are also standing on your shoulders, so thank you. We have a number of questions so far. Councillor Henderson first up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, just thank you so much as well for coming. It's a reminder for us of the housing crisis that affects so many Aucklanders, and our role as leaders to fight that housing crisis and actually enable the human right of people to have a warm, dry home. So thank you so much. Look, I do have a question, Chair. If you could do one thing to fix the housing crisis, what would it be?
Thank you for your question. I think I'll pass them to Marlon.
Yeah, kia ora. Housing is just way too important to be a political football, and we need a non-partisan plan. For too long, every time the government changes, the whole entire housing system changes. If we really are serious about solving the housing crisis and fulfilling the right for that every New Zealander has to a decent home, then we need civil society, that's us, to work with the private sector, and then come to government and make a long-term, multi-decade plan so we know exactly how many public houses to build, exactly how many community houses to build, how much market housing, and to stick to that plan. And that's the only thing that's really going to solve the housing crisis for Tāmaki Makaurau.
Ngā mihi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Deputy Chair, Councillor Dalton.
Kia ora, thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for your presentation today and for everyone for coming today. Thank you for the meeting last week, Margaret and Anne and Talava, and also Salvation Army. I have some responses for you that the Chair and I have been working on with the Executive Officer of Chief Planning and the Principal Advisor to the Mayor. So we'll get back to you on that. My question, though, Marlon, it might be early days yet and you might not be able to answer it, but I am interested in the impacts that the recent announcements from the Minister of Housing has made around kainga ora, around removing the First Start contribution to buying a home. What impacts, just maybe off the top of your head at the moment, and secondly, the dreadful treatment there is of Housing New Zealand kainga ora tenants, and the impacts of just being able to be moved on without any reason now. Any initial thoughts around that? Thank you.
Totally. Thank you, Councillor Dalton. What I would say is this. When the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, made her commitment to Te Ohu Whakawhanaunga, she made it to every single Aucklander that she would be building 1,000 new public houses every single year in Auckland for this term. Every single Aucklander holds that commitment, and we're looking forward to Budget Day and seeing the government stick to that commitment too. Regarding tenants being moved on, what I would say is this. What we know is that if you want to solve the housing crisis, you need to give people two things: support services and a stable and decent home. And if moving people around may be a risk to that right, and may certainly be a risk to people's right to security of tenure in their home. And what may likely happen from that is people ending up on the streets in our own communities that we see every day already. So Aucklanders, I hope, should take that into account.
If I could just follow up with one question, thank you for that. I just wanted to ask a question around your response to Councillor Henderson around housing, around the political football that it becomes. The same has been said of transport projects, and we never get anywhere. We get held back or flipped around. So I'm wondering if that conversation has been held at any level around a separate entity, and I believe it has at some point in time, that can just continue with the infrastructure that this country needs for housing and transport outside of the political environment.
One of the 7 principles of the right to a decent home is access to services and infrastructure. And so we would support anything that helps to fulfil that right. And I do believe that public transport is one excellent example of that. And so we'd be pleased to meet with yourself and any other councillor on our transport discussions in the future as they come.
I'd like that. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to you all. You raised 2 questions. The first was actually around what I would term the participatory democracy as opposed to the representative democracy. This is the representative democracy, and then we make space for participation. That is not the participatory democracy, by making a little bit of space. How does your organisation see this entity of Auckland Council going forward? How do you see it moving from the representative model to a real participatory model? That's my first question, and I'll come back to housing.
Well, next time we'd like to be able to bring the banners inside. That would be lovely. What I would say, the most important thing that any city councillor or city council or city council senior officer, so I'm glad to see senior management here, is to meet with us. When we send you a letter representing over 40 organisations and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Aucklanders, asking for a cordial meeting and negotiation on policy in this city, we would like to meet with you. Kia ora.
That's pretty fundamental. Thank you. And the second question is around housing, housing affordability, homelessness. We've seen record numbers of houses being built in Auckland until more recently with, a downturn, interest rates biting and construction, etc. But we have seen record numbers. For probably about 3 years, we saw record numbers. And look, there's success there for all of us. But homelessness and affordability kept racing away. So how do you see the problem? We have focused, both government and ourselves have focused on quantity generally, but untargeted. And I'd like your comment on how do we need to refocus to draw the energy and the thinking to addressing affordability rather than just building more and more, assuming affordability follows. And we know from all around the world, affordability does not necessarily follow quantity.
Thank you for that question. If you look at our submission, we did talk at length about inclusionary housing and sort of the impact it could have at the local government level. In short, inclusionary housing is a planning tool commonly used overseas that requires or provides incentives for developers to incorporate affordable housing. So in short, it essentially means that more people will have a shot at being able to flourish in a secure, healthy home because that affordability is required legally through planning tools. Now, as with most planning tools, the devil is in the detail. So I can refer you to more research that we've done at Community Housing Aotearoa or workshop with this committee on how it could be implemented at the council level. But as we stated in our submission, we do believe that it is time that Auckland Council more seriously consider its role in implementing inclusionary housing, and we'd like to continue working with you as an alliance on that, yeah.
And I'll just add to that, there is significant research showing that a market-driven model without measures for affordability is a failure.
Yeah, and one last one. For the Chief of Strategy, and Chief of Strategy, you probably know this question's coming. When we've considered the Forward Work Programme previously, I've said, where is our attention to affordable housing and homelessness? And I look at the Forward Work Programme on the agenda today, and it's not evident. So it's one thing for me to, as a councillor, to say nice things to you and go, yay, 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 but the truth is it's not on our agenda. It's not. So our formal work programme has a massive gap in housing. We're addressing unitary plan responses. So my question is, I asked this about 18 months ago, and I know we've had some challenges, but when is this committee going to formally identify affordable housing and homelessness as a responsibility for its attention? It's not there now. And this group is coming, assuming that we are abreast of that, and we're not.
Kia ora through the chair. Thanks for the question. Look, you're right. There isn't anything specifically on the work program coming to this committee. That doesn't mean that there's nothing happening, say, around homelessness in particular. And we know that there's a number of work that we do with other agencies in particular on homelessness. Affordable housing, we have advised as well that we certainly play a role, but we don't have the biggest levers in the system around affordable housing. But I think that's why working with the chair, you can see the proposed recommendation up there. And what I'm expecting is from a report back that this committee may in fact choose to do some more work or to set some different kinds of policies in these areas.
And look, I appreciate that, but it should not take this group to trigger this council to wake up to that resolution there. It should have been there. I asked for it a long time ago, and I guess it was part of the work that the former committee was working on. We had the housing task force. We've got a range of work streams that were underway, and we did have problems, but we need to get that up and get it live, because the number of people that are homeless out there is just enormous now. It's enormous. And I read an article in The Guardian that per capita, we're one of the highest in the world now in Aotearoa. And so it must be high in Auckland. It's not my turn to comment here, but
this is not a question. And Councillor Darby, we have given you feedback a number of times on that, and also the Councillor Bartley is leading some of that work. We also, through your committee last term, lost inclusionary zoning a number of times, and I don't believe this term we would get it over the line, but we can try again. And all the work program is still continuing, which we have given you feedback on. But the advocacy points to government, and maybe I've got questions after the four that are there around my concerns around the government changes on where we had been going, which was fantastic direction on social housing and affordable housing. Councillor Ferry.
Thanks. Councillor Darby stole my main question, but I do have another one, so that's good. So one of the things I'm interested in is how, and this might be a sort of future discussion, but how Auckland compares to some other local governments around New Zealand in terms of direct provision of social housing. So it's something that we haven't added a lot in that space since Auckland Council started. There's the Haumaru program, but it doesn't really seem to be much of a focus on expanding housing stock in line with population growth. Is that something that you'd have any thoughts on at this point? Whether council has a role in that sort of direct provision of housing alongside other community housing providers?
I only comment that the Queenstown's Lakes District have improved their housing supply by including inclusionary zoning in that area. So there are councils that are looking at ways that they can provide a range of housing options to accommodate people in that space.
Right. I think that would be something I'd be really interested in a further conversation about other councils we could look to. Sorry, they're quite temperamental. It's got to do with the heat in the room, I understand.
I'll just add that within Aotearoa, New Zealand, other councils financially support at arm's length their housing providers. So with lower cost finance, direct capital contributions, inclusionary housing contributions,
Yeah.
and access to council land. So we're ready as an alliance to sort of work with you on exploring those opportunities.
Great. As a first step, you might want to see if there are any particular local boards who would be interested in some projects in that space. It would likely be their land in the first instance, and that might be a good starting point. Anyway, sorry, that wasn't a question.
I would like to encourage council, as it's been triggered, that housing and the supply of that does come onto the work plan, because we need to have a seat at the table in order for us to work together to address some of these issues that have been raised. And as with regard to affordable and rental housing, we do not have the supply. We have over 25,000 across on the housing register that are looking for housing. So the situation is there that we need to address. It's how we do that and how we can do it collectively together to address that housing need.
Good, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. And first of all, congratulations for everyone who's turned up today. This is by far and away the largest delegation that's been before this council this term. So thank you, everyone. And it's also very apt timing if you're following Parliament the last week or so. This battle's raging on between what the last government was doing in terms of Kaingora state housing and this new notion of community providers somehow filling the gap and doing better. So I take what you're asking from us in the first instance is just engagement, just talking, which seems reasonable enough. My question, though, to you, and you seem to have more of an insight into some of the research or how things could be done differently. This hasn't just happened within the last few years. This has been over 2 decades now. So my question is, in your talk to us, because we haven't exactly been the shining light of solutions either, do you see solutions here or overseas examples, like places like Chile perhaps, where countries have dealt with similar challenges and have dealt with them relatively expeditiously with that cooperation of government, social providers and councils?
So a couple of questions there. I'll let Dalaval speak to specific solutions that we've seen working internationally. I know that the adoption of the right to a decent home in Toronto has led to a successful establishment of a program, still early days, where they have a staff member and I believe team, a commissioner, dedicated to reviewing all council policy and its relation to the right and the decency principles beneath it. So as a start, having some inbuilt institutional support for making sure that the right to a decent home is being supported in Auckland is a good thing. If you want to go to sort of the further end of the spectrum about what's been done to totally solve homelessness and the housing crisis, then you need to look no further than Vienna in Austria, where they introduced the right to a decent home a little over 100 years ago, embarked on an intensive social housing provision program, utilising both direct public housing and then also community housing providers, and still do to this day. I mean, they even have union-owned housing there. Imagine if the Maritime Union could own some housing right by the port. And that's been an incredibly successful program. And even though there are still market rents and things spiraling out of control over there every now and again, you do not see the homelessness and desperation that you see in countries like ours where we've chosen the market model. So that's the sort of the further end and the best example that we've seen internationally of a successful housing system.
I'll just say there's a lot of examples where it works well at the local government level, but there's still a lot of work to do in the context of Aotearoa to sort of figure what that out is. But we can provide more research on sort of on that, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe he mana. Thank you, Chair. Look, everybody's acknowledged the presence. My question is going to be based around your thoughts as to what Auckland Council should do when they engage with the community. Now, you mentioned that the group that you have with you is Salvation Army, some of the other organisations. Are you saying to Auckland Council, we are the group that you need to engage with and not the others individually?
That's a good question. Certainly not. What I would say is we are definitely your first port of call when it comes to anything civil society or community voice in Tāmaki Makaurau. So if there is a major issue or a major decision that is upcoming, I believe my contact is with the staff, then get in touch, and we have member organisations and members and leaders, community leaders from the top of the North Shore all the way down to the bottom of Tāmaki Makaurau, from the east to the west. So please do know and have the knowledge that you can prioritise having a conversation with us, and we can put you in touch with the right people, or give an alliance-wide response. But certainly would also say that there are other technical things that could be done to better improve consultation with the community. It is a difficult process to engage with, and we see that reflected in the statistics of engagement and the disproportionate representation within submissions to consultation processes.
Chair, the reason I mentioned that is in September of last year, Lotu and I ended up going to the Salvation Army and talking about the issues that have now been put in front of us. With that, Kataraina Maki is the person that I contacted, obviously with her as the General Manager, and also Ben Brooks. So I think that's the reason why I ask, is because there are some issues that we're dealing with Salvation Army at Manuka, with Ronji, who I believe is now left. I don't know whether he's still here, but I believe he's left. So that's the reason for that. I'm going to contact Kataraina because I need to get and close the loop on that discussion, which had everything on the table which you have brought to us. Can I just say one more thing, Chair? And Margaret, you mentioned the word triggered, and with your answer to Councillor Watson's pātai. And I'm glad you are here, the whole collective, because it's triggered now some of the councillors around here to now say, what the hell are we going to do? How are we going to get everybody together? So congratulations on that, because that's what you've done, is triggered everybody else now to say, look, we need to get them on board. We need to do a lot more work, knowing that the government is also a big player in this. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora. Thank you, Herman.
Kia ora. Councillor Leone, online.
Sorry, my background is a little bit distorted there. Kia ora everyone in Aroha Mai. I'm sick at the moment, so I'm not able to be there in person. And I know that you've already pretty much answered this question, but I just wanted to say, is there anything in addition to what you've already mentioned about how you as Te Ohu see Council's role in housing? Because you've already mentioned quite a lot. I know that you've answered that extensively, and I know from my own experience as well, living overseas, that there's so many other councils in Europe, for example, that have a lot more power to be making decisions in this space. I know also the FO today, there's a hui on homelessness. So it's a huge topic that I'm also passionate about, and I tautoko what's been said previously around us prioritising this. So just any final comments on that in terms of what you see the council's role regarding housing?
Well, I would just thank you, Councillor Leone. What I would just say, so all the things we've listed and more, but I would just say two things. First of all, We met with a range of experts and council staff, including the homelessness lead, Ron Suka. We've met with a range of community providers and community leaders and so forth. And looking at the evidence and looking at the levers that council has and could have, there is a view that if council wanted to, it could solve homelessness tomorrow. It is possible. And so that is the broad approach with which that we're taking here. Second of all, the immediate thing that would be good to see, the immediate next step just to get us started, is Auckland Council adopting the right to a decent home.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Newman, and then I've got Councillor.
Good morning and thank you. Councillor Darby has really hit the nail on the head with his inquiry this morning, because we can give the speeches, but in fact the work program doesn't exist in the space. I'm trying to ascertain what the immediate priority should be. Is it affordable homes to rent? Is it affordable homes to buy? If it's affordable homes to buy, is that through inclusionary zoning? Because inclusionary zoning, the potential there is that the first person will take the benefit of that will be the developer. Or is it trying to look at surplus council land which we can then make available to a community housing provider to go and build on the basis that it's going to be a shared equity arrangement? I don't know what the first priority is. And I would be very keen to understand that, because I have not observed a work program that is actually delivering in this. I mean, Barrowcliff was a good example of a development that actually got some affordable housing, but they're rare as hen's teeth. But what is that first priority beyond a declaration about what this council believes? And there has to be a first policy intervention that you say this is the number one cab off that rank. I'm not sure I agree with it, but there has to be something that goes first. What is it?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Councillor Newman. It's a very difficult question to answer at a council table. What I would say is this: inclusionary housing and the financial support that can give, and the direct implementation of social housing and affordable housing that can provide, will enable council to make decisions on those other things. Inclusionary housing and having, for example, a portion of profits from a major housing development near a CRL station, and I know that process of zoning is taking place, will give council a bit of a test run at inclusionary housing, see how it operates, see how it works, and also bring in some income, whether it be financial income or capital injection to council to be able to make some of those other decisions, which are all good ideas, by the way. Providing council land for social housing is an excellent idea, and inclusionary housing is a good step that you can start off with.
Can I just ask one follow-up, Chair, if I may? Because, okay, I certainly wouldn't want to be giving a concession to Kāinga Ora, because that's the Crown, and I don't want to preference the Crown as receiving the first benefit, because quite frankly, they'll be the last organisation I want to benefit right now. But with respect to, okay, so if it's a community housing provider, presumably that would have to, the benefit would have to go to them, but it would have to go to them on the basis of a set of contracted conditions over and above the resource consent for that type of intervention, so as to ensure that the housing is actually delivered at a price point that is going to benefit whoever wants to purchase it, or is it to be held by the community housing provider for rentals? I mean, where is that point? Is it for social housing for rent, or is it for the first home buyer to buy at a discount?
Yeah. It's the whole spectrum is the bad news. It's all those things that need to be done. But I would really welcome a meeting with you, Councillor Newman, to talk through that. It does sound like you have some ideas on this and what we can put into the work plan, so I think we would appreciate that. And I believe Sister Margaret is in your ward, so it'd be great to arrange that. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Last question, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but I was triggered during the debate. I'm very disappointed with policy and more policy. I like to see actions. I was at Vision West in West Auckland. I have been over the last couple of years. They got tiny houses there they can't place because they can't get past our planning consents on properties. Would you agree that one of the things we could do first is act is the important issue, and that's something we can act on.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you.
Good. Oh, thank you. Councillor Bartley now.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to something that is part of some of our daily lives. We deal with housing issues on the daily. It's good because you highlight something that not a lot of councillors have that exposure to or understand the severity of. We have looked at affordable inclusionary zoning before. Phil Reid did a lot of work in the planning department at council. And there were it really came down to government advocacy from our side. But your presentation, I think, has sparked off a lot of people. So it's good that we can perhaps look at that again. Duncan McLennan, Ron Suka, their team, my committee is the one that's picked up homelessness, and they've done a lot of work in that space with Housing First and Kaui Te Kaha and other organisations, Kickback Front Door. So just accepting your offer to work together, to be at the table. My own question is really around affordable rentals. Do you see that as the priority? Because you've got kāinga ora there with the public housing, our social housing, but what people, and then you've got transitional housing, which I also wanted to know, do you think that that's actually not the solution? Because a lot of people who are homeless that come to me say, I don't want to go into a transitional home. I don't want to go into those hotels. I want a permanent home. So just your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah.
Yes, we do need permanent housing for people, and there is a chronic shortage of rental accommodation. And I think as a country, we have a responsibility for the government to provide rental accommodation for people on low incomes and that have no place to call home. And this is what we need to work together on to achieve. And we need to do this collaboratively and across bipartisan agreements so that we can come to some understanding that our people on low incomes are housed and housed by the state and looked after.
Kia ora. I keep saying it's the last question, but if we have two more, we will need to move on pretty soon. Member Ashby.
Thank you for indulging me. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a quick one from me. I've just been looking through your website. Obviously, housing in terms of affordability, whether it be purchase, also conditions for rentals or availability, they affect all our communities. But some a little more so than others, and so the Māori community in particular is disproportionately impacted across whatever housing category you're looking at. Do you have a policy or a statement or a position on that currently, and or are you interested in bringing that into the conversation to come? Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Member Ashby. What I would say is yes, definitely. And one of the things we talk about in our long-term submission is how we can better support Māori housing providers. And you look at the work that Kahu Tukaha has been doing around the corner from here, I think. It's incredible. It's fantastic. And we look at more ways that we can support them. And I was heartened to see the continuation of fast-track consenting for Māori housing providers in that submission. And I would also really strongly welcome a conversation with you as a member after this meeting to better understand other ways that you may see that we can support Māori housing initiatives because they are needed and that community absolutely needs it too. Cool.
Kia ora, Councillor Walker, he must be online. Councillor Walker, if you're speaking, we can...
Yes, hi. Yeah, sorry about that. So I've got a question just further to an earlier question around tiny homes or portable homes. The information I've received from various people is that could be quite a fast fix in a number of locations. But as somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Councillor Turner, there are major impediments in planning. In a situation where it is a very realistic and affordable proposition, do you think that that council should set up some form of work stream around expediting what we can do in that area that might be more similar to the situation that exists in other countries, where it is an affordable, a realistic and a relatively fast way to find some accommodation, and the planning rules allow it.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Councillor Walker. I would say one of the big things that we've been talking about is how we can better support the provision of any kind of social housing. So, and certainly looking at the success of fast-track consenting for Māori housing, it would be interesting to have a work group focusing on how we can expedite not only that option, but all the other options which Te Ohu is putting on the table. So would be very keen to meet with you and talk about that. Thank you.
So just further to that, through you, Mr. Chair, if we were interested in putting some sort of working group together, would you be in a position to put up a proposition to us to make it happen and engage with the officers so that from their side they could make it happen?
Short answer, yes, definitely. Slightly longer answer, the second ask that we have in our long-term submission is the setting up of a coordination group to look at how we can solve the housing crisis and address housing issues in Aotearoa, sorry, in Tamaki Makaurau, start local. And so I think as part of that, that's an excellent idea, and we'd be happy to work with whichever staff member or council we need to do to provide that proposal.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, presenters.
Thank you, Councillor. And we have been in touch previously with MB. Largely the tiny house issue is with the Building Act, not council related, and we can continue those conversations next time we speak with Minister Bishop and Minister Pink and others around how we can streamline that process, because largely it's able to happen, but often the building consent can be a barrier to allowing it to happen easily. I have a question then before I just briefly speak, just on the 1,000 homes a year that Finance Minister Willis has promised. That would be, and that's just off the top of my head, so I may not be correct, well below, I think, what we have been seeing in the kind water space in Auckland in recent years. So are you aware of that? 1,000 seems low.
Yes, it is well below that. That was 3,000 they were building. Now we're committed to 1,000. So there is not enough housing being built in that space, and it's less than what was provided earlier.
Yeah, I couldn't find the yearly figures, but on my monthly figures of the kind water space, it's far, yeah. So thank you, the 3,000.
Just to clarify, that number was based on the previous government's annual increase of public housing, so it's a little over by about I think 150 over the around 800 or so a year that were being built by Kāinga Ora and Tamaki Makaurau. Regarding that ask, it'd be excellent for any planning that's being done between council, and it's great to have you here, Mayor Brown. Thank you for being here, to have that conversation and know that when you go into negotiations with the government that they have made this commitment to all of us as Aucklanders.
Kia ora, thank you. So just a few comments from me, and once again, thank you very much. And just on that comment, I guess it would be good to see this group. Obviously, you have spoken to some ministers, but this push again, because a lot of those tools or the keys to success are through government, and we're happy to support again. Last term, through Plan Change 78, which we are going to be revisiting through hazards next year, it was decided not to progress with any affordable housing or inclusionary zoning, and that was, some of us voted in favour of that, and some that got voted down twice last term. So we can't change the unitary plan until the government changes the law to allow us to change the unitary plan or the Plan Change 78 that we're currently in. So I'm happy to put that discussion up again, although I would say my vibe is that would be less likely to get across the line this term, as it lost twice last term. Also, with some of us push forward to increase the number of houses on council land, including older persons' homes, that lost as well. Once again, happy to look into that again. But most of the work that, again, thank you, Mayor Brown, for reversing those changes in last year's budget. There was going to be a reduction in that homelessness spend. As Councillor Bartley says, that now sits not with the Planning Committee, but with Councillor Bartley's committee, and she's doing a fantastic work in that space. But it doesn't mean that the responsibility isn't all of ours, because it 100% is. But Ron and the team, I've met a number of times with him. They're doing some fantastic work, but no doubt we need to ramp up that work as well. So there is a lot of work going on in the papakainga space as well, Māori housing. We need to be more enabling of this work. We obviously work alongside Eke Panuku where we can with Kāinga Order, so we've got some great developments coming, working alongside Kāinga Order. Cross fingers that those stick with the change in government. I'm sure they will. But for those opportunities, we need to keep bringing forward if we're going to keep losing votes on inclusionary zoning and those sorts of tools. So thank you for all the information. We are going to have a report back on both your requests, if we can, what it looks like if council pledges to the right to a decent home. Obviously, that's fantastic if we do that, but I want it to be more than words. We have had a lot of our plans are just advocacy to government, and it needs to be broader than that. And then we can report back on your other requests as well, and just generally give a refresh of what council is doing in the space, because there's quite a broad amount, but also meeting with ministers, which we often do, making sure we are highlighting that very loudly. So thank you all. It's not obviously magical answers today, as always, but as many of you have been in this space advocating for communities for years, you know that every time you come and speak to any of us, government, media, it makes a difference. Those voices constantly out there every time a change of legislation happens or something goes backwards, or when good things happen, you're there to celebrate it too. So kia ora to all the advocacy and work that you do well outside normal working hours. Your lives are dedicated to this work. So myself and Councillor Dalton will move a vote of thanks, and also requesting that and to highlight the fact that through public input we can only ask for a request of a report back. We can't ask for other decisions to be made or debated here. So I will move, and Councillor Dalton has second. And all those in favour? Any opposed? Wouldn't have thought so. Thank you so much for being here, and no doubt we'll see you again soon. Kia ora.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, now we have our local board input. We have the Waitakere Rangers local board to discuss and talk about the